to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Our lives. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save us. Someone to save our lives. Our lives. Ooh.
Planted within this fertile brown skin lies the capacity to be magnificent. We stand on the backs of giants, the oceans formed after millennials of sun-kissed rivers have poured in, and like the oceans, our vastness has not yet fully been explored. We know more of the glass ceiling above us than we do of the power within us, that black power. We are electric, shocking civilization into existence charged with greatness, but how soon we forget that his story doesn't tell our story. The Underground Railroad isn't our only claim to glory. We didn't have sit-ins and marches when we built the pyramids. The struggle is real, but so are our successes. Do the math yourself because the figures have been hidden. All we needed was a reflection, but instead, we've been looking for
someone to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Our lives. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save.
Well.
Someone to save our lives. Our lives.
So the next march on Washington should be a march of melanin, flowing throughout the streets like the blood throughout the skin where they can't breathe. We will carry the oxygen. Cells of change say their names to ensure they haven't died in vain. So we shall overcome becomes we have overcame. We shall lift every voice and sing as every fist is raised. Take every knee as we make the stand to say that we the people won't simply go away. We were stolen from Africa, brought to America with royalty in our back pockets. That's why they consistently charge us paying for this country's vices as the cops become the robbers of our liquid gold. Spilled across the nation, soaked into a foundation that they've tried to wash away. But like liquid gold, we always rise. All we need to do is rise, and we don't need
someone to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Our lives. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save us. Someone to save our lives. Our lives.
There you have it, Such, along with Carrie Joy, Melanin, all those beautiful images from Up and Along 5 Points, all along Welton. Just beautiful imagery, beautiful music, like it just eases you into the day, right?
It does, and Brother Jeff, we have a beautiful community, but it just the song and the visuals just tell us you have to fight for what you want to keep.
Speaking of fighting, we're going to talk about fighting today. Penn, before we even get started, I got to have you read this trigger alert. There's the Hope Tank trigger alert. Just hit them with that trigger alert because I know they're going to need this one today.
And really today, it's going to be needed. Trigger alert. This is a show that triggers people because you've entered a free think zone. If you're not willing to be exposed to other points of view, tune out now and don't read the comments. You've been warned.
You've been warned.
Right there. You've been warned.
That's the trigger alert. Penfield Tate, long time, you've just been a part of, the fabric of the city, the state, legislator, mayoral candidate, attorney. There's so much that Penfield Tate has been a part of. And Penfield's father, first black mayor of Boulder. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Yeah, and first black city councilman. There have been black city council people since, but he was the first. And here's another thing, Brother Jeff. On August 12th, Boulder is going to rename the municipal center for my dad.
Really?
Yeah.
It's going to be Penfield Tate.
Penfield W. Tate II Municipal Center.
And you're going to be right there at the ribbon cutting?
Up front, right up front.
They're going to usher you up, and you're going to have to say some remarks.
Yeah, my sisters aren't public speakers, so
You're
they'll
the
make me
family
do
spokesperson.
they'll make me do all the talking.
What are you going to
They always
say?
do. I'll just talk about my dad's legacy, his work in Boulder, his commitment to community and to people. And, obviously you've got to thank the city council and the people of Boulder for doing this. I'm sure it's not a decision they arrived at lightly or easily. And so I want to acknowledge that history and that legacy.
Congratulations. Legacy is everything. It just shows that you stand on great shoulders. And that's who we are as a people. And, to get that recognition is everything. To just think about, the legacy, and you're continuing that legacy. Happy Father's Day. Belated Father's Day.
Thank you. Same to you.
How's
Same
your
to
daughter?
you. My daughter's doing great. We spent Father's Day together. We spent the weekend together. So she's doing well. Did you spend your weekend having fun?
Absolutely. Great
Okay.
Father's Day. And I'll tell you, Penn, I want to ask a question, because when you were running for mayor, one of the large conversational pieces or topical issues was development and the overreach of, in many opinions, of the heavy hand of developers on neighborhoods. Not just, development is good, you know what I mean? And, you've got to have growth. But when you start seeing your community being turned into an Airbnb nation, and everybody's coming in to make their investment, and then they're scraping and they're popping, and some folks get, zoning one way, and then the other person gets zoning the other way, depending on who you know, and all of that stuff. That was a huge campaign conversation, if I recall. Am I right? And if so, has development been reined in, or is it just kind of pushing out further, which a lot of people were really concerned about?
Brother Jeff, it was a huge issue during the last municipal campaign. Many people in Denver feel like we've just been an overdrive and hyper-developed as a city. It's driven gentrification, it's driven people out, and it's radically changed the character, the feel, the fiber of so many communities. People wanted it to stop, but clearly we have an administration that is, hell-bent on development, and so they've been pushing it wherever and whenever possible.
Making money is a good thing. I'm not against folks making money, However, shouldn't the rules apply to everyone? Or at least should, just a level playing field, if you're able to see what the rules are, and you're able to compete, and you're able to participate, and you're able to grow, and you're able to, thrive in your city, that's one thing. But if it's always the same handful of folks that not only have, but they continue to get, and they get bigger and bigger, and then, it's all about these connections, I think that's what concerns me the most.
Well, and you've raised an issue that people have had in Denver for a number of years, and that is the sense that the rules don't apply equally to everybody, that some people get more favorable treatment, usually based on their relationships with the administration. But I think the other thing that really has people concerned is, and you're right, you've got to develop, you've got to evolve, you're going to grow, so the key is smart management of growth so that you maintain the fiber, the fabric, the feel of communities. And so many people in our city feel that simply hasn't happened. Whether it's the fact that we have a whole bunch of ugly buildings going up everywhere without any sense that there are any design standards or aesthetic standards to what's being done in neighborhoods, to neighborhoods even raising objections to some things, and the administration just rolling over them, basically saying the developers, we're going to give them what they want, and we're going to put city money in the deal or other city benefits to make it easier for them. So people are frustrated.
I thought I was the city, though. Ken, see, there's this raging kind of dual or kind of differings of opinion, because when I think of the city, I always thought I was the city, and then the folks work for me. We elect them, they go to work, they represent our interests, but it feels as though the city is something else. It's over there. It's not for me. It's as a matter of fact, I'm in the way most of the time. And if I can't afford to be here, then I really shouldn't be in the city. And I'm concerned about seniors. I'm concerned about folks that have mobility issues. I'm concerned about those who, you know what, are on fixed incomes. I'm concerned about those that are not going to be at the higher echelons of the pay spectrum, just the ones that are working for a living, the ones that, you know, have to fight for even $15 an hour. All of that, it feels like, you know, my place in Telluride, where you come in, you know, you're a worker, you know, but at the end of the day, you leave because the average person can't afford to live where they work. And now we have a city that's the fastest gentrifying city in the nation, at least in the top 2. And it's, if you can't keep up, then it's like, oh, well, something's wrong with you, and not something's wrong with policies that will prevent you from keeping up and also push you away to attract capital.
Right. No, and Brother Jeff, the sentiment you're expressing is one that I hear literally on a daily basis. Again, there's nothing wrong with growth in and of itself. It's whether you have the policies to manage growth, to support growth, to control it so that it happens in a fashion that's compatible with what you have in a city and what you want a city to become. And the sense that so many people have in this city is that growth is out of control because there don't appear to be any parameters, there don't appear to be any guidelines, and some of the guidelines and parameters that exist in many people's minds don't make sense. For instance, we're on Welton Street here.
Absolutely.
And you have held down the fort on Welton Street. But as you move just further west down Welton Street, we have all those high-rise buildings that have been built. They're set right up on the sidewalk, so there's no green space. There's no light coming through. There's no air. It gives you a claustrophobic feel.
It's a concrete canyon.
Yeah, it's one thing to have a concrete canyon in downtown. Downtowns have sort of been built on the theory of concrete canyons. It's where you centralize commerce, industry, and a lot of other business activities. But this is a traditional neighborhood, and while it's all right to have some business activity expand, you don't want the buildings. When the buildings overwhelm the physical space, it creates a feeling that lives are being overwhelmed by the buildings and what they represent. And that's part of what's happening in this city with all the gentrification.
Well, think about this, and we've got a big announcement coming up. Free thinkers out there, Penfield Tate's joining us. We're just talking about the city we love, live in, and work in. This is poetic because when you forget about those who are struggling, I believe that a city is best known and judged by how it treats the most vulnerable and their artists. You know what I mean? And
right.
Those, like, everybody knows how to treat wealth well. Like, that's not hard. You know, most folks pander to wealth. But look at this growth, and there's always reminders. And the reminders of folks getting left behind are these tents that you see everywhere, up and down the streets. You're seeing them in neighborhoods that you're not supposed to see them in. And now there's a big fight because the tents, a safe outdoor space, has made its way to Montview, the big wide Montview with the big trees and the multi-million-dollar homes. And the church says we're going to do the Lord's work and clothe the naked and house the houseless. And there seems to be a stir, like, we know there's a problem, but it's not supposed to be a problem right here. It's supposed to be a problem over there. What's going on with the unhoused neighbors and the approach in terms of sweeping them from one end of the block to the next end of the block and then back to where they were and then back to where they were? What kind of policy is that?
You know, the plight of the unhoused in our community is probably the greatest failing of this administration. And while a number of people will talk about all the things they're doing now, Brother Jeff, the reality is that for so many, many years, the situation has not been addressed. Now I want to be clear about something because I know somebody's going to object to this. I'm not saying that this administration has done nothing. That's not the point. What I am saying is this administration has not done enough, did not start early enough to address the scope and magnitude of the problem with creative and innovative solutions, and as a result, it's gotten exponentially worse. And the worse the problem gets, the harder it is to craft solutions to address the problem because you've let it become unmanageable. And that's about where we are. We know sweeps don't work. We know camping bans don't work. What works are finding ways to allow nonprofits and other providers expand their services more rapidly so they can bring more of the unhoused in different neighborhoods, in different communities, which means you've got to lead and have conversations in different neighborhoods and communities so that the issue is sort of spread throughout the city and dispersed throughout the city and not concentrated in one place. You know, my office building where my office is, we got an email from the building manager today saying, we know many of you are upset because an encampment of the unhoused have moved onto that grass space between the street and the sidewalk right in front of the building when they were just a couple blocks up the street a couple weeks ago. And they said, well, we're talking to the city trying to deal with it, but there's not a whole lot they can do. And many people are asking how to get to this point.
Well, they're going to move them back to where they were. It goes back and forth. And,
Sure.
and what they've started doing now is they started putting down rocks and barrels. They started with the first solution was the fence. Now they took the fences down and they're
those big old
landscaping
boulders,
with boulders and bricks. And now I looked around the corner and they got big old metal, the horse troughs, the feeding troughs where we just fill them up with concrete. And it's like there is a problem that's not going anywhere, and you're not going to solve it by saying that you're not going to allow it to be certain places. You've got to figure out how to get people housed. You've got to figure out how to build a city that includes all levels of incomes and abilities, and you've got to build a city that's just not a place where the upper and the rich and the have and the hottie-toddies have, but an actual city. And that being said, Aurora has a lot of land where they can expand. There are not a lot of places in the Mile High Income City where they can expand, so they just zone up. And there's this question of open space.
Right.
And that leads us over to the Park Hill Golf Course. And this is the question I've been asking you, and I'm going to ask you this again. I'm going to ask you to set this up. And then I want you to address those who are watching that would wonder why Brother Jeff cares about a $2 million investment that he has a part in that came out of his tax dollars, which was a part of a conservation easement. Why should Brother Jeff care? Why should I just let business people do their business as if I'm not a part of that business equation? Why should I just walk away and say, build another concrete canyon, make another extra dollar, do all of these different things, and deny my rights, deny my interests, and Brother Jeff just go away because I'm nobody, whatever it is, I'm not a big person, I don't have a handshake, I'm not in the in crowd, I talk about biscuit and molasses eating Negroes and all of that stuff. They get a little wonky when I come around, but don't I have an interest in the Park Hill Golf Course? And if so, what is it? Would you unpack a conservation easement?
Sure. And Brother Jeff, let's go back to something you talked about a moment ago when you said, aren't I the city? Yes, city government is there for its citizens. It is the mechanism, government itself is the mechanism by which we, the people, agree to work collectively to accomplish things, goals, and objectives we have set out for ourselves. So let's begin with that principle. To your point, in 1989, the people of the city of Denver passed a bond ordinance, and part of the money in that election was devoted to buying what was the Park Hill Golf Course. Now, for a host of reasons, the city never got around to buying it, but during Mayor Webb's administration, the city, working with the Clayton Trust, which is a nonprofit organization in the community that needed money and wanted to strike a deal with the city spent $2 million of our tax money to buy what's called a perpetual, which means permanent, which means forever, conservation easement on that land. So what's a conservation easement? It essentially means you buy forever the rights to develop that land, which means that whoever may own it down the line is buying land that they know has no development rights attached to it. It has been sold to someone else. And in this case, the development rights for that land were sold to the people of the city and county of Denver. It was purchased with tax dollars. So yes, in that respect, you do have an interest in that land because your tax dollars paid for it.
Now, would you say that the Honorable Wellington E. Webb was forward-thinking and visionary in terms of when the influx of all of the money and the developers and I want to grab all of the little dirt I can and put something on it, him saying open space is important and I'm going to leave something to the future in terms of open space? Isn't that visionary? Because you had some mayors that put up parks, you had other ones that planted trees, you had others that leave their mark. What was the Honorable Wellington A. Webb's thinking as it related to say, well, I'll put this $2 million in play to make sure this conservation easement is in place and there's open space?
You know, I think what Mayor Webb was thinking, and he's talked about this publicly before, is Mayor Webb was good about governing and trying to accomplish balance. So let's be clear, during Mayor Webb's 12 years, we saw a lot of building and development and construction primarily in downtown. We saw new buildings go up, saw city buildings get enhanced and developed, and we saw building around the city. But we also saw a mayor who made a primary emphasis on expanding parkland and making sure we had available open space, recreational space, not just in some communities, but in many neighborhoods around the city. So while he was also finishing DIA and putting buildings in downtown and doing other things, he had the foresight to say, you know what, we've got this money. We can't afford to buy the golf course, but we can buy the development rights, so the land will forever be open space, scenic, and for recreational purposes. And that's what he did. And it's really a gift to Northeast Denver that he acquired this for the neighborhoods of Park Hill, Northeast Park Hill, Globeville, Swansea, Elyria, all of the surrounding neighborhoods, so that we would have a large natural space preserve that's open and available for the people of the city and county of Denver.
So what happens when those say, and I have an answer for this, my own particular answer, and I want to dive into my particular thinking, but I want to hear yours for a second. What about those, like Justin says, and I'm not sure of the full context because there's a lot there, but I want to just pick around this. Those who say affordable housing is a problem. People need a place to live. And that's a place that's going to give people a place to live if we build affordable housing there. And you can't talk about, folks having tents and then you don't give an opportunity to build housing. Isn't that a contradiction? Why not? If that whole thing was full of affordable, low income or free housing, wouldn't that be the solution to all these problems and we're just standing in the way?
No, not at all. Nobody is saying we don't need affordable housing. Many of us are saying you don't put it on the last large expanse of open space you have available. There are a lot of infill sites around this city, and a lot of housing is being built in some of the infill sites. Now, the question that I would argue that needs to be posed is, why didn't the city insist when it was incentivizing all of this rampant development over the last decade, why didn't it insist that affordable housing be a component of it? And, given my time in the legislature, I know people will say the law said this, the law said that, but I've also seen mayors who sit down with people and say, if you want something to happen, on your project, you need to do some things that benefit the community. You need to incorporate affordable housing or attainable housing in your development. That's not been done for over a decade. And so those who say that this parcel of land is the solution to all of that, I would respectfully offer that's kind of dumb. Because what we have found throughout this country is federal policy was building, and Brother Jeff, you can relate to this, the projects. We spent the 50s and 60s and 70s building low-income, affordable projects around this country, realizing that the worst thing in the world you could do is build substandard developments where you put a whole bunch of people who are living on the margins economically and expect them to succeed. That's why federal policy turned around in the 2000s and started dismantling all of these projects. And I'm thinking about Curtis Park, just to the north of us here. They started dismantling all of these things because they realized it was not only bad government policy, but bad economic and bad fiscal policy. And the last thing I would offer is there is no way this developer paid $24 million plus for this land and intend to put a whole bunch of affordable housing on that site. It is not going to happen. You look at the Central Park neighborhood, and when that development was first approved during the period of time between the Pena administration and the Webb administrations, the original development there, Forest City, promised to do a bunch of affordable, attainable housing. And to this day, I don't believe they've still met their goals that they set out and committed to nearly 25 years ago. This developer isn't going to do it either.
Well, I could tell you, Penfield Tate is here. We're talking about the Park Hill Golf Course right now, and here's my question to all of this. I want you all to listen to this very closely. There's a conservation easement attached to the property. All sides are saying something about what a conservation is, a conservation easement is, what a conservation easement isn't. They want you to vision what you want there. They want you to talk about what you don't want there. They want to talk about this. They want to talk about that. And Brother Jeff has been saying since day one, when you have two sides that can't agree, why don't you just take it to the judge? Like, if you don't know what a conservation is, the conservation easement is, if you don't know if it came in at the same time or after time, if it's a state statute, if it's not, it's like, don't count on Brother Jeff to try to untangle that. That's not my background. That's not my expertise. But I do say that if I have an interest in something, then I believe that a court of law can determine what the two sides are saying. So if the court of law says you can put up affordable housing, then the court says put up affordable housing. If the court of law says you can build skyrockets all the way up to the heavens, then go ahead and put up sky rises up to the heavens. If the court says you can't do any of that stuff, then why are you asking the community what they want when you're putting the cart before the horse? If you say you want all of that and then the court says you can't do any of that, why are you wasting my time and money? That's what I want to know. And so from the very beginning, I was saying I appreciate the business folks. I like the folks that are whatever it is that you're doing. But since I have an interest in it, I want my day in court. And guess what I heard, Penn?
What's that?
Brother Jeff, you can't have your day in court. And the reason you can't have your day in court is because the two sides that are party to this, one of them has to bring a charge or case against the other. And I learned that the developer and the city, they're in bed together. And so they're like, I love you. I love you. I love you more. I love you. You hang up. No, you hang up. No, you hang up. They're not going to court. And so all of a sudden this shenanigan starts happening, like, let's do a visioning party. Let's talk to the community. Let's knock on doors. Let's put out flyers. Let's put out polls. Let's do all these different things. And I'm sitting here saying, when do I get my day in court? And I'm like, every day saying, I'm going to court, I'm going to court, I'm going to court. Then all of a sudden, a group said, hold on a second, Brother Jeff. There's some other folks that are saying, maybe that's the way to go. Just hold on a second. And the next thing you know, guess what? Brother Jeff's going to court.
Brother Jeff's getting his day in court.
Getting my day in court
No.
with individuals from every district in the city and organizations. Talk about where we're at with this lawsuit and
Sure.
why.
And let's put it in this context, Brother Jeff. Now, remember, folks out there, if you're a Denver citizen, this conservation easement is something that your tax dollars bought. You paid money for it. You own it. That's number one. Number two, the developer that bought the land knowing that forever and ever they were not allowed under state law to develop the land because we, the people of Denver, own the development rights through the conservation easement. So nobody fooled anybody here. The developers in this deal bought land they knew they could not develop. Now, what they paid for it is their business, but they bought something and now they want to try to do something different with it than what they understood when they bought it. And they're real candid. They'll tell you they thought they had an agreement with the city, and they think they still have an agreement with the city to let them develop the land, and that this easement that belongs to you and I and others is a nuisance. So, Brother Jeff, allow me just to read something.
Please do.
If you go to state law, here's a conservation easement. It is a right in the owner of an easement, that's those of us, the people of Denver, to prohibit or require a limitation upon or an obligation to perform acts on or with respect to a land appropriate to retaining or maintaining of such land, including improvements, predominantly in a natural, scenic, or open condition, or other use or condition consistent with the protection of open land, environmental quality, or life-sustaining ecological diversity. That's in state law. The easement we as the people of Denver own is something that is defined by that state law. That's what we paid for and got. And under another state law, the only way you can change that is if you go to court and prove that it's impossible to maintain the original purpose of the conservation easement. Not that it costs too much, not that you want to do something else, not that you had a visioning process and now a few people think you ought to build a bunch of high rises there and put a bunch of concrete over the land. That's not the test. The test is if it's impossible to maintain the open and scenic nature of the land protected by the conservation easement. And that's why we filed the lawsuit, Brother Jeff, because
The lawsuit is filed.
The city has wasted over $250,000 hiring a bunch of consultants and lobbyists to try to convince people they want something else, like a grocery store or affordable housing. The city has spent over, I think it was 1,100 staff hours of over 70 people in the city convening meetings and having people come talk about visioning and not telling them up front that until a court determines that we can change the easement, your visioning, your thoughts, your dream, it's all irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Somebody has to prove it's impossible to keep the land in an open and scenic condition. And here's the irony. The city and the developer who both want to develop, they won't let you walk on the land now unless you have a special invitation, but it's open and scenic right now. There's no development. There's no concrete on the land now. So I don't know how they can claim it's impossible to keep it in the condition they have it in right now.
This is amazing, everyone. And I want to really underscore something. This isn't, in my opinion, this isn't about you as a developer or you as a city. I want to know why my rights are being trampled upon. And I want a judge to say, you know what? They've said, Brother Jeff, you could just get a tea time. Or they said, Brother Jeff, you might want a grocery store. Or they say, Brother Jeff, you might want some low affordable housing. Brother Jeff, they can't do none of that. Or they can do all of that. Like, wouldn't a business person want to know up front what they can do and can't do as they move forward with their planning? Like, is there a thing that they're saying, we just want this conservation easement to go away, and if we can get it behind or in front of a friendly city council that's got enough votes that says, well, the people of city of Denver said we don't want a conservation easement, we need development, and you got folks that are just developers in the form of council persons, et cetera. These are my words, not Penfield's word. Wouldn't any business person want to know what rights they have and have a judge just settle it? Would, like, at some point, don't you say, let's go to the judge?
No. I mean, we're talking about business people who knew when they bought the land that we, the people of Denver, owned the development rights permanently, in perpetuity. They didn't care. They think they have a mayor and maybe a city council that's going to let them do whatever they want to. And they're going to go through this charade of pretending to listen to people and claim they're going to build consistent with people's desires. Look at what this same developer has done at Loretto Heights. They let that developer, they acquired the property, then the developer met with the community and said they were going to do a host of things. And as soon as you turn around, they're ripping like 200 trees out of the ground.
I heard they said they combusted.
No, they didn't combust. Somebody lit them on fire after they cut them down and pulled them out of the ground. And then they tell people, don't worry about it. We're going to plant a bunch of whole new trees. So in 30 years, we'll have big trees again. Now, you'll all be dead, but maybe your kids and grandkids might enjoy the trees in 30 years. That doesn't make any sense.
They also came in on the heels of a community planning process and just overshadowed what the community was saying and doing and put in their own process and then move that process forward and then hit them with that metro district also.
Right. And you know, and it's a classic example of once, unfortunately, in our city, we've seen too many instances where once you give some development entities the first piece of permission, they just take license and run in a direction. And once you give up certain rights, you can't rein them in unless you have a city administration and government that wants to curtail them. And far too often we've seen they have not, which is why so many neighborhoods get upset about these processes.
Well, let's talk about this for just a second. Those of you who think that we are playing, that this is something that is kind of just a might be, could happen, you go look it up. A new critical development has taken place regarding the Park Hill Golf Course, land, Save Open Space Denver, along with plaintiffs, and you're looking at one of them. His name is Brother Jeff.
Two of them.
Penfield
Tate.
And Penfield Tate. You're looking at a couple of them, filed a complaint in Denver District Court seeking a court order regarding the city-owned 2019 conservation easement. Like, that's what we're talking about, the conservation easement.
Yeah.
We're suing Mayor Hancock and the city planners. West Side isn't in here. We want to know about it. We want to know about this easement.
We're not. The lawsuit does not name the developer or any people who have a contract with the developer or any people who may want to have a contract with the developer. We're saying, judge, court, you need to hold the city responsible for following the law. We're saying that the law says that once a conservation easement is in place, you have to follow the law to change it. You have to prove certain things. You don't come up with some phony, time-wasting and expensive visioning process that doesn't matter, because if the court doesn't say you can change things, none of the visioning in the world matters. It's the court that has to make the final determination. And our lawsuit says, city, since you won't go to the court and you're spending all of our tax dollars on this process to appease a developer who bought land that they knew they couldn't develop on, we'll just take the bull by the horns and ask the court to, judge, take a look at this and tell the city, stop wasting money with this process. You have to come into court, and a court has to give you permission to do anything with the land, period.
Doesn't that make sense?
I think it makes sense.
Ask the court what you can do. Like, all of these individuals are saying, we need this, we need that, get this, we need a store, we needed that. That's fine. Why don't you ask the judge or the court if you're able to do that? And if you're able to do that, then build the biggest store. You can build a super mall. You can, like, if you're able to do that and the court says it's okay, build the biggest mall that is the world has ever seen. But don't you just need to get permission? I want to know what my conservation easement got me. You can't take $2 million from me and then all of a sudden say things have changed. We're getting more money, more money, more money. Forget them, and we'll handle it in the politics. We're going to handle this in the court.
Yeah, and Brother Jeff, one other thing to think about, and it goes back to the Loretto Heights example I gave. Now, you know, over the past several months, I've been on your show before to talk about this, and I know West Side and the developer with Ken Ho and some others have been on your show to talk about this also.
Good guys.
And we have debated this in front of a number of neighborhood groups and city council. And I just want to deal with one example that sort of, I think, illustrates what I'm talking about. For a lot of this time, West Side and their partners have been saying that Park Hill wants and needs a grocery store. And so you need to let us blow up the conservation easement because we'll build you a grocery store. Until recently. And recently what they've been saying, Brother Jeff, and Ken Ho and I were both on competing web news interviews. And Ken Ho said, well,
how did I miss this?
Well, we're not going to build a grocery store right away because first we need to build rooftops on the Park Hill Golf Course protected land, protected by conservation easement. He said we need to put rooftops on the protected land before we build a grocery store. Now, for all the people in Park Hill, and particularly Northeast Park Hill, who have been fed this story that this development is going to bring you a grocery store, what the developer is now saying is that the grocery store is not for you. It's for the new city they want to build on the protected land. When they say they need rooftops first, they're saying that your rooftop isn't important enough to warrant a grocery store. That your rooftop and your neighbor's rooftops are not sufficient in their minds to have them spend the money to build a grocery store. That they won't build a grocery store until they have enough of their own rooftops they've built and made money on the protected land before they'll consider building a grocery store. I would offer to all of us, be careful about what people promise us, because for too many years in this city, we've been promised things by developers and others that were never, ever delivered.
Well, I could tell you this, and to our friends that are business partners within Westside, I appreciate that business relationship and everything that you're doing and you continue to do in terms of great work for the community. But you want an answer, and you want an answer from the court about what it is you can and cannot do, what it is you can develop and what you can't develop. You want to know if that conservation easement actually applies to your business relationship. You want to know what that conservation easement does in terms of perpetuity. And the reason you're so happy is because you're going to get a court to say what that is, and it's not going to be your council people. It's not going to be the mayor who has never turned down a dollar. I mean, he can't walk away from a development dollar. No one trusts him, and you don't even trust him. You know you do not trust Mayor Hancock, and if you do, that's because you're probably in the inside circle of those who are able to split up that cheese, that cheddar, that scratch, that skrill, and all of those different things. But the average ordinary person just wants a community that they can live in, they can work in, they can go to the store in, they can do all those different things. And trust me, all of that stuff is popping up everywhere I turn around. I see something else being developed. We are not starving. We're not falling apart. What we are doing is not seeing any trees. We're not seeing any outdoor space.
You know, Brother
We're
Jeff,
seeing more concrete.
The example I always give, and this is why this really is a fight over green versus concrete. When was the last time any of us saw a developer go to city council and say, I own a block that's got a bunch of buildings on it, And I think to enhance the quality of life in the community, I'm going to tear down all the buildings, I'm going to bulldoze them all, and I'm going to build a park on this entire block. When was the last time you saw that?
Hasn't happened. And it's not going to happen.
No.
Because
No.
they want to maximize their dollars, and they certainly should. I'm just saying you can't maximize your dollars off my back.
And you can't maximize your dollars everywhere. Again, we're talking about a developer that bought land that it knew was prohibited from development under state law. So they didn't get swindled, they didn't get hoodwinked, they didn't get cheated, nobody ran a game on them. These are sophisticated folks with a bunch of money.
They want to go to court
and a bunch of expensive lawyers. They don't want to go to court because they're afraid they'll lose it. But they know there's a problem, because if they'd have thought they had the right to do anything, you'd be seeing bulldozers and plows all over that land right now, and concrete being poured all over the place. They know they can't. They know they can't under state law. And what they're doing now is partnering with the city to try to come up with this funny process that makes you think that they can. But the true test is, what will a court allow? Because conservation easements are protected by state law, and by state law, you have to show to a judge that you meet certain conditions that allow you to alter, to amend, or extinguish, or release, or terminate, or abandon a conservation
Well, it's
easement.
going before the court now. It's filed. Like, all of the kicking and screaming is done. Like, the answers that you want, whatever the court says, I'm good with. Like, whatever the court says, I just want to. I don't want to hear Ray telling me, and then Shaniqua telling me, and then Billy Bob telling me, and then big pocket deep money telling me something. Just what does the court have to say about this $2 million investment? What is this conservation easement? And I'll go on about my business. I don't want to hear about, well, if you live 2 blocks from the park, you got to say, but if you live 6 parks away from the park, 6 blocks away, you don't have a say. If you're from Park Hill and you grew up here and your big mama came from Texas, then you get to say something. But if you came from California, then you ain't really from here and you're really not a part of the city, so you don't have a voice. I mean, it gets real ridiculous real fast, and it blows my mind that for people that are always brought before court, now we don't want to go to court when it comes down to what are our rights as it relates to property, easements, etc. You want to know these things, and you're going to thank us. You're going to thank us, and I'm going to thank you right now for going to brotherjeff.com and making a donation of any amount. We are powered by the people. Thank you to all of our patrons, those of you who go to brotherjeff.com, and those of you who use the favorite great Leanne Wheeler's option, that Cash App. Thank each and every one of you. Penn, before we get out of here, I want to ask this question. Why is the city so invested in the private purchase of land? Like, for example, if I purchase a piece of property, why would the city be paying for having individuals to tell me what I want on my property? Where are the private property rights? And then why is the city so embedded with West Side and spending even more of my dollars on their behalf to figure out what I want, what I don't want, and all of this other stuff?
You know, Brother Jeff, I got to be honest with you. This one I'm struggling to figure out because, part of when this fight started, remember, folks, in either 2017 or 2018, the city tried to buy this protected land so it could develop it itself, and then realized that they didn't have the right to do it because there was a golf course operator who had the right of first refusal to buy it or match any offer, and also had a right to keep running the golf course if they wanted to. So the city had to abandon that effort to develop it. Then Westside comes in and buys the land, but it's got a conservation easement that the city's already paid for. And it's not as if the city came to people and say, hey, do you want to give up your easement? And they're playing this game now about, well, what would you like to see on the land? What we'd like to see on the land is what we bought and paid for. Open space and recreational use, that's what we paid $2 million for. and development can happen in a number of other places. You've done programs and you've done podcasts about what happened on Fairfax in Park Hill. You've done a podcast on, we used to have a great community amenity, the East Denver Y.
Absolutely.
And look at what the land looks like now.
It's like a honeycomb. I don't know what this stuff is.
And I don't know how much of it is affordable, but I have a feeling that not much of the units built there are affordable. I hope some are, but I don't know. I'll admit I don't know.
When you were in the legislature, we talked a whole bunch about what affordability means. Like you can be making $150,000 a year and still qualify for affordable housing in some cases. Like attainable housing, subsidized housing, low income housing. Affordable. They get real fast and tricky with the words, but with this Park Hill golf course, we're talking about a conservation easement. I have never seen anybody who's went to a closing and no one explained to them exactly what is encumbered on that land, what rights you have, and if they didn't tell you, then their insurance is going to get hit because you need to know what you're purchasing. And Westside, as you keep saying, and I certainly know, they knew exactly what they were getting. They thought that they would be able to sneak that through on a consent agenda at the city council. Somebody was watching and said, hold up a second. The people, i.e. Brother Jeff and the people, have a right. We're going to pull this out and discuss it. And somebody said, we can't make this thing go away. I want to see the magic, the tricks, the shenanigans that happen to make this conservation easement go away, even as much as the mayor has said, well, I'll punt it for 3 years.
Yeah. Well, and here's another trick and shenanigan, Brother Jeff. So in addition to filing the lawsuit, the group Yes on Parks and Open Space has worked, collected signatures, and we now have a measure going on the ballot in November. And that measure says that before land that's designated as parkland or land protected by a conservation easement, which includes the Park Hill Golf Course protected land, before it can be developed for residential or commercial purposes, it has to pass a vote of the people of the city and county of Denver. That's going to be on the ballot. Now, here's what the developer is doing now. They're trying to put a measure on the ballot that confuses people. And they got people saying it's an open space measure, but it's really about concrete. What they're trying to do is change the definition we're working with so that no land has to be voted on before it can be developed. You can do residential and commercial development on any land. They're trying to take away the protection that we're working to put out there. And frankly, they're just lying to people saying it's an open space protection measure, and it isn't. And it's an old political trick. They're trying to put something on the ballot that sounds similar to something else on the ballot they don't like, hoping to confuse people, and people vote no on everything. And, let's be honest, they have $1 jillion at their disposal, so they'll spend $1 jillion running a slick campaign, kind of like We Can Do Better when they were dealing with the camping ban, and then they did nothing.
Yeah, we can do better.
We can do better.
Kind of like also when the proposal or the proposition to take the slavery out of the Constitution, it was so tricky. Folks were thinking they was getting rid of slavery and they was voting for slavery.
Yeah, that's exactly
so they had
right.
to go back and rerun that.
So when you talk about shenanigans, they're going to continue. But, that what's important thing is that we as a community, and I said this at the start of the show, you've got to fight for what you want to have. If you want parks, if you want recreation, if you want open space, you need to understand that there are forces in this community that are going to take those things from you, even if you've already paid for them 20 years ago. You have to fight and be vigilant to maintain what you already own, and that's what we're doing here with the ballot measure, and that's what we're doing here with the lawsuit.
The lawsuit is in place. It is filed. Remember, I was saying, it's not easy getting a lawsuit like as detailed as this is and as capable and as looking at all of those different things, because I've been working on a lawsuit for DPS and segregation and all of that stuff. It's very, very difficult, but I can tell you right now, with this conservation easement, it's going to go before the court, and everyone will have an answer, and then you'll be able to move accordingly, and that's doing things in good order. That would seem like what everybody would want. But when you've been playing these political shenanigans and you've been making these campaign contributions and you've been, being buddy, and you've been slimy and grimy and all those different things, and then you run up and you start seeing, there's this thing called a conservation easement. Don't worry about it. Just buy it. Wink, wink. I know. Buy it. All of that stuff. I think people are tired of that.
Yeah.
And I think the people deserve better. We can do better.
Yeah, we're going to do better.
We're going to do better. And so we're not, all of our good friends, buddies, colleagues, and friends, don't be all tight in the jaw about this. Don't get all upset and salty. What you're about to see is what you've purchased, what it's worth, and at the end of the day, you're going to make a profit because you're going to probably have to sell it back to us anyway, because it's going to be an arborarium. We're going to get some fishing over there. Going to be some trails and some horses. And if you want some fresh food, be the biggest open market you could ever come across.
No, Brother Jeff, and you raise a good point. There are cities around this country that have done some very interesting and innovative things with large patches of open space in the city. Atlanta has done some amazing things with parks that address the issue of food deserts, whether it's with community or neighborhood gardens or other classes to teach people about healthy eating. Detroit, other cities have addressed this issue very creatively, and quite frankly, our group will be talking about some of these other things. We need to think about putting this space to use more creatively, so that it has a greater direct benefit for the community.
But first we got to hear from the judge.
That's right.
The judge has got to tell us what it is and what it isn't. And so I'm doing no visioning until I hear from the judge, because I only have, I'm getting older. I only have so many fire and cells to be dealing with all of this stuff. And I'm not going to be a part of these planning processes talking about, do you want a Whole Foods, or do you want a Slow Foods, or do you want a co-op, or do you want this, or do you want that? And then somebody comes and says, you can't have any of that, because that's how life is for our community so often. Everyone's telling us, what do you want? But when it's time to get it, it's nothing that you can have.
Yeah, and you raise a good point, Brother Jeff. And the other thing we've talked about before on this show is there's a difference between the high-level purpose of the easement, which is to preserve scenic and open space and recreation, and the specific uses, which can be a golf course, which can be a community garden, which can be ball field, which can be playgrounds. The uses are things where we have some flexibility and ability. What you can't do is defeat the overarching purpose of open space, green space, recreation, conserving the environment, consistent with the statute that I read. That's the overarching purpose of an easement.
You know what also makes great cities great are great attractions that people will come from around the world to see. Mm-hmm. Nobody's coming from around the world to see your next tall square building.
No.
Nobody's going to see your next place where 500 people live on top of each other. Nobody's going to come see all of that. But I can't guarantee you, for these investors who may own that land, I've already figured out how you can get your money back. You familiar with the Botanic Gardens? Mm-hmm. Don't we own that also?
Yeah, that's a city cultural institution.
Isn't it beautiful?
It is
Don't
beautiful.
People go in there and pay tickets, and they have concerts, and they sit on the grass, and they learn, and they do all that. Just imagine, I was in a place in South Africa. It's gazillion times that size. It got an arborarium. It's got all the stuff in it. And here's what we're going to do, Penn. If you're from Denver or Colorado, you're going to get in free.
Yeah.
But if you're coming from another state, you're going to pay a few dollars. You're coming from another country, you're going to pay a few extra dollars.
You can figure it all out. I mean, think about it. And when we talk about being creative, Brother Jeff, what if you took part of that land and did something like the Levitt Pavilion in Ruby Hill, and you built like a permanent home for the Black Arts Festival?
Absolutely.
Or some
Juneteenth.
You can do those sorts of things when you have open, available space, and you're creative and inclusive about it. And it's a conversation the entire community ought to have about how we use our natural and open green space to promote a healthy environment and to provide us with recreational opportunities.
Don't let anybody tell you that we need affordable housing out of one side of their mouth, but then they sold the low-income housing and subsidized housing to private developers and are now selling townhouses for damn near $1 million. Like, these are, we need affordable housing. Wink, wink. They done sold the affordable housing, created unhoused neighbors, and then tell you, they pull at your heartstrings. Oh, wouldn't you like to have a place to live? I guarantee you, go to any of these places in the Mile High Income City and see where it is you can afford to live. One thing you can afford is chubby curls, educating the natural community one scalp at a time. You've got those little skinny curls. Make them chubby, chubbycurls.com. Penn, thank you for the update, the information, but the big news today, Save Open Space Denver files a lawsuit over the Park Hill Golf Course land conservation easement. It's representative of all of the different council districts. You're looking at two of the plaintiffs right here, and we want to know what that conservation easement will allow, what it won't allow, and we can move forward from there. Thank you for everybody who has been staying on top of this issue. Thank you to everyone who knows that they have rights and they're willing to fight for them. Thank you for everyone that owns a penny or $1 billion and would like to protect what they have. And thank you for not listening to individuals who tell you what you can and what you can't do, because this is a law of lands, and this is a actual real estate asset.
It is.
Like, this is like, you can put a conservation easement on your books.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have it on the books of the city. It belongs to the people of the city and county of Denver. It's ours. We own it. We paid for it. We bought it.
And we're not going to just let you take it away.
That's right.
You like, well, give me the easement and I'll give you a grocery store. No. You know what else before I go, Penn, which is what cracks me up? How many acres of land is it? Is it like, how many acres?
155 acres.
155 acres. They say, you hear folks saying, well, listen, we're going to give you 50 acres. I'm like, I own 155 acres.
Yeah,
like,
you're not giving me anything.
Like, why are you going to give me 50 acres when I own 155 acres and I'm cabbage patching and I'm dancing like because I got 50 acres when I own 155 acres? I thought slavery was over. Didn't we just celebrate Juneteenth?
We certainly did.
So quit
a
trying to
federal holiday
enslave
for the
us.
first time. Yeah.
We need a general to come in, and in this case, the general is going to be a judge. It's going to be a court, and the lawsuit is filed. Penn, happy Father's Day. Thank you to everything
Same to you, Brother
that
Jeff.
you're doing. Oh, Penn, there was a law passed to where now the city council has to approve the mayoral appointments.
Right.
Have you heard about that?
Yeah, the charter amendment last election gives city council confirmation rights over mayoral appointments, particularly cabinet officers.
They get to approve it.
Yeah.
Do you know who one of the first places that's going to happen is with Phil Washington?
Yeah, it is.
This is an amazing time to be watching the city because I think her name was Day. She left the airport.
Yeah, Kim Day is retiring, and so the city is going to be without a director of aviation, and the mayor has nominated Phil Washington, who used to run RTD, and then he went to L.A. and came back, and now he wants to run the airport.
Do you think he'll be able to get that Great Hall done?
The Great Hall is that deal is gone.
Is it going to get built?
Well, no,
because it was some bad concrete or something.
No, there's
they had to
nothing
get some
wrong.
new concrete.
It was an idea that had problems, and even the city acknowledged that the administration didn't have the expertise to do the project. It wasn't the concrete. We didn't have the technical expertise. I think we all need to hope that the airport gets put back together again so that it's more usable for us, the traveling public.
How much did the big French company get to leave that deal? Like, how much did, like, they were hired and then all of a sudden they were.
I think they were a Spanish company, I think. I think, I don't know. I know it was north of $200 million.
To leave.
Yeah.
We got to talk more. Thank you, Penn. I know
All
you
right.
got to go.
Good enough, Brother Jeff.
Everybody, don't forget, there is a lawsuit. We are exercising our rights. And for those of you who are not vaccinated and you wish to be vaccinated, this Saturday at Brother Jeff's Cultural Center, there will be a free vaccination clinic for those 12-year-olds old and older. If you are a minor, you have to be accompanied by an adult. Walk-ups, no identification required or needed. It will be from 11 until 4, Brother Jeff's Cultural Center, 2836 Welton Street. I will post on my Facebook page exactly the QR code and also the registration link. But don't worry about that. Just show up. And if you want to be vaccinated, you will absolutely have that opportunity to do so. There will be 2 forms. There will be the Pfizer and also the Johnson & Johnson. That is this Saturday, June 26th. And
Brother Jeff, thank you for doing that. That's a great service you're providing to the community.
It's a pleasure, and I can tell you, those vaccinations seems to allow a lot of folks to come out and congregate, especially during Juneteenth and et cetera.
Yeah. Well, it's important because now we're seeing so many variants of the COVID virus that it's important that as many people as possible get vaccinated to protect not just themselves, but everybody in the community.
Well, there you have it. Appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget, go to brotherjeff.com, make a donation of any amount. We appreciate you. Again, I shall have my day before the judge. I don't have to hear from Ray Ray anymore. I don't have to hear from Shaniqua and blah. Like, all of it is good. It sounds great. It sounds better than Luther Vandross. It sounds better than Anita Baker and Earth, Wind and Fire. I love the sounds. I like the tunes. I like how things are being placed. I like all of that. But at the end of the day, the court's going to call this tune, and that's who I'm going to listen to, because I've been hearing way too many conflicting kind of what cans and what can'ts, and I like all of it. But I'm going to see what the judge says, and that's what this is all about. Nothing personal. It's about protecting my rights in the same way that you're protecting your rights. They're protecting their rights, aren't they, Penn?
They are. They are.
Why can't I protect mine?
But there's no reason why you can't. We should, and
we
that's what
are.
we're going to do. That's right.
There it is.